We're good at doing the deep work, but struggle to do the daily work. Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers,
We're therapists.
and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
What's going on, you guys? Tyler,
Hey.
your wandering therapist here. I am by myself today with Brandon. He's just living the good life. He's got all these connections all over the world with really good friends, and he's currently spending some time with his family and a really good family friend in Alaska. So, Brandon, I hope you're enjoying yourself right now. I hope you're enjoying the company there too. And I'm really happy for you. I'm really jealous too. Alaska's like one of my favorite places to go in the whole world. So I hope you're catching a lot of fish and you bring home some salmon for me. So today we've got actually a pretty cool episode. I think we have some people who are very connected to both Brandon and I. We've been around the block in several different areas of life. Both of these people have come to our retreats and participated in treatment with us as well. And they've been callers on the show before too. So Jared and Kaitlyn, welcome back. Glad to have you here.
Hey, sorry, earlier you were talking to people and I thought you were talking to me.
No, you're all good. But the best part of what I see right now, and a lot of people are just listening, so they won't see this, but if you go to YouTube, you can actually see it. Your background is phenomenal. It's a picture of Brandon in what looks like some kind of it's almost like he's doing the hukka. So Brandon is here with us in spirit, if not in person. So that's awesome, you guys. But yeah, why don't you guys just kind of jump in and kind of paint the background of where things are at for you right now and what you want to talk about today.
Okay. She looked at me, so I'll go. We originally planned the meeting to talk about some kids stuff, but we're going to call an audible. And so I feel like when it comes to the really deep emotional shifting work, like going to retreats, doing ART, being vulnerable, being open and honest, like all of that I'm really good at. But when it comes to the daily small acts that keep you out of relapse and keep you in recovery, I just cannot grasp that for some reason. And I feel like it's my daily habits that are preventing me from sobriety. And I used to hate the word sobriety. I didn't think it had a place in recovery because of some past recovery work I've done, but I've come to learn that sobriety equals love for myself and can be a really positive thing. And so it's something I want to strive for. And then a secondary thing is that Kaitlyn and I are both super good at the deep connecting work together. We're really good at talking about the deep stuff. But when it comes to just interacting daily, we're kind of awkward unless we're with other people. It's like talking to you or talking to somebody else, we can laugh and have fun together. But when the camera's off, we don't not like each other, but we just don't know how to have fun together, I guess, and laugh and just.
Yeah. When we originally started dating, we really kind of jumped right into the deep stuff and really formed this deep emotional connection. But we never did the light and fun. And so I feel like, we've been married 13 years. I feel like that's been, this has been our whole relationship is just like the deep stuff and therapy and different things like that. And we love it. And we love the deep stuff, but sometimes we're just like, man, we just need to chill out and have fun together.
You guys don't know how to do that with each other.
Not
alone. Like with our kids, we can, with other
Uh-huh.
couples, we can. But if it's just her and I, it's like, well, what do we do now?
We'll go on a date and it's like, at dinner and we're just like,
We can talk
all
about the
right,
kids.
yeah, let's talk about the kids.
I'm going to
Yeah.
turn off this virtual background really quick because we keep fading in and out.
Okay. As much as I love to see Brandon, I can see your face a lot better now. So that's
Now you
good.
can see the hole in our wall that I need.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys got the point across, and now Brandon knows he's got another super fan. So,
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh,
Yeah,
no. We shouldn't have done that.
yeah, make his head even bigger. So, yeah, no. So there's actually, if I'm hearing this right, there's kind of two parts and they seem to maybe overlap with a common theme here. I just want to make sure that in essence, what I'm hearing you say, Jared, the first part of what you said was that you've really bought in on recovery, the concept of recovery, recovering your heart, finding yourself, building a new relationship with God, connection to God, self, others, but somehow the habits of that prevent you from sobriety haven't been changed.
Yeah. Yep.
So you've got the day-to-day sort of habit loop, even though you've bought in on recovery. And so you're like one of these opposite people who's like, I'm still having regular relapses, but I love recovery.
Yep.
And then that kind of carries over to, it sounds like, and maybe you guys could give a little bit of background to this too, if you feel comfortable with it. Your relationship was formed in a quick way with deeper emotional connections, but you've never really done the work to just do the day-to-day sort of maintenance of the relationship in terms of just general friendship, quality of life, vibrance, that kind of stuff. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're definitely in this, like this system cycle of like relapse, boundaries, and then, I start to cool off a bit and feel better. And then we're good for like a week or two, and then like it starts over.
Gotcha. Is that relapse cycle? What roles is that relapse cycle playing in the relational part of what you guys were describing? How much effect does it have on you guys?
I think different parts of our lives, it's played different roles. I think I definitely went through like a big phase of just like avoiding, just trying to be like, I kind of got to a point before we started actual therapy was just like, oh, this is how my life's going to be. It's really sad to me that I was in that place. But then also I think it's interesting, and maybe this is a lot to grab in an hour, but last time I feel like he went a while without a relapse, and I was on edge for a long time, and it's almost like I was more uncomfortable without the relapse because I'm so used to that system. I'm kind of more of an avoidant attachment person. And I feel like sometimes that gives me an excuse to avoid, that gives me an excuse to not attach in that healthy way. And so when he wasn't relapsing, I was like so anxious that and at the time, like I didn't realize it until he relapsed again. And I was almost like, whew, like it was
I got an excuse to pull away now.
Yes, I can be in this comfortable pattern again. And it almost like put me in this uncomfortable space. And so I feel like we kind of have these toxic like systems, patterns going that we don't really know how to get out of or escape.
Okay. So Kaitlyn, just go back to that time when the sobriety was extended. You're living more in this place of almost discomfort, because if he's not acting out, that means you're now at a spot where, and you can trust that he's actually doing his work. That means you're at a spot now where you either have to choose in with more vulnerability, more connection, or you're going to continue to keep it at arm's length, but there won't be a good reason for it. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that has played out. Probably, it's almost like, if I'm hearing you right, even if it's just subconsciously, you're almost hoping that he'll relapse.
I never really thought about it that way until he did. And then I was like, oh, why do I almost feel like more connected to him than I did before it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That feels, in some ways, it almost feels safer, because then the pattern that had been established can stay where it was at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jared, what are your thoughts on that? Would you add anything to it?
No, just it's stupid. Like that whole pattern is just dumb, but it is what it is, and it is there. Um, and as far as my role with the relapse being comfortable, I do think also um when I'm trying to think of the right words, but when I want to connect with her or something, and sorry, I'm having a hard time thinking, but I do think there's my role in that like if I get uncomfortable as well when I want to reach out for connection, but she's not available. And so then I can just go to relapse. I'm trying to think of my part in the cycle, I guess, is what I'm trying to piece out right now.
Yeah. It's almost like when she pulls away, there's some level of justification that goes through your mind that it's okay to act out. And in some ways she gets totally disappointed and devastated and doesn't feel like she can lean in when you're acting out, but it's also a comfort zone for her because then she doesn't have to do the work that you guys were here talking about of the day-to-day leaning in and more connection, which is scary and vulnerable. I'm also wondering too if there is something. I know that we always ask the question to somebody like, what is the payoff to your addiction when you act out? And there's usually a personal component to that. I relieve stress, or I feel like can numb out for a minute, or I don't have to worry about the things in my life. I also wonder, and I don't know if there's anything to this or not, Jared, but is there any payoff relationally for acting out? Is there anything that it produces or
Um, like I don't know. Um, I mean, the only thing I could even think of is like, let's say I'm in slip territory and I see something that I would consider a relapse. It's like, well, at this point, I'm not going to be able to connect with her anyways. So, you know, I may as well numb out the pain. And I mean, then, once the cycle's finished, I just feel like crap. But the only thing I can think of is that it helps me avoid the awkward. It's like we don't have to try at that point. We can just both go into our own cycles that we're in. We don't have to try and reach for each other.
Like takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
And so it takes the pressure off of the next steps that you guys would want to be taking in your relationship, which are probably scary and awkward. There's maybe not even a skill set or a habit loop that's formed yet there. And so in some ways it's a step back into the comfort zone on your side, Jared, the same way that Kaitlyn's describing on her side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether that's conscious or not, that's at least one of the things that might be going on.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of times it is conscious. I think the word like that you're using, the words habit loop, is really where I get stuck and where I struggle is my habit loops and where I've been trained throughout my life to find comfort in those habits.
Yeah. I wonder if like this kind of, and this is where they all kind of thread together. The first question and the second question you asked today is the shifting of the habit loops towards your own recovery. And we talk about dailies all the time, right? And dailies, maybe let me just take a spur off of this and we'll come back to you guys' relationship for a second, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I think dailies often are not understood or talked about properly, where people hear the word dailies and they think either I have to do the exact same things every day perfectly, or I'm a bad person, and then that means I'm not going to relapse. Or they feel like it's like this checklist of things that I have to do, like a task list that has to be done every day. And then that just gets to be drudgery in and of itself. And what dailies really are, and this is where I think it's kind of interesting. There's some nuance in your situation here, like Jared, when you were describing it, is the goal of dailies is to actually pursue and have an emotional experience with your best self or with your higher power on a regular basis. So I'm going to wake up every day, and if I were to go on a quest every day to have an emotional experience with my best self, at least to me, that sounds better than wake up and do these 5 things, and yeah, I promise you won't relapse. And in your case, Jared, it sounds like you've done some of the deeper digging in terms of ART trauma work. You've totally been recalibrating your relationship with your higher power since I've known you. But the day in and day out pursuit of that heart connection isn't a habit yet.
Right.
And when you think of dailies, how do you conceptualize dailies?
I think there's 2 deeper level issues that I need to figure out. And unfortunately, both of them come from either past therapy trauma or trauma with how I view God and how I was raised. And so, yes, I've worked on this version of the old God and the new God for the last, 2-3 years, 2 years. And the old God still just is so good at digging in. But what I mean by that is it is a very, very much if you do this, then you'll be blessed. If you do not do this, then you'll be damned, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I do view dailies in that way. And so when I think about connecting with God, all I can think about is the ways I was taught growing up in the church and things like that. And then when I sit down to try and read scriptures or pray, my anxiety and stuff just skyrockets and I can't even focus. So like another third question is how do I connect with God each day when all I know is that old way I was taught? Like it's like I need a new way to connect daily with God. And the best way I found that is go up in the mountains. But what if I can't go up in the mountains every day?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I might even just change a little or add to what you said there. A new way to connect with God every day, and I would say, how do I get into the habit of pursuing a connection with God every day?
Okay.
Because I know that at least for me in my own recovery work, it's not like I have this amazing, mind-blowing experience with God every day, but I think it's the heart that's willing to pursue the relationship that does as much of the cultivation as the actual response I get back from God. It's like it's cultivating this willing and humble heart. And sometimes there's also this kind of more tangible than others sometimes experience of being reminded who I am, or having impressions or thoughts come from a higher power as to what he wants me to do or who I am to him. And in your case, Jared, I actually can relate on some level to this, where there's a holdup towards even the sort of like formal practices spiritually because of that tie to your old belief system and in like this justice oriented, punishment oriented God. So if I'm in your shoes, I wouldn't want to step into that every single day and feel like if I fail at all, that means I'm bad or unworthy or not going to be blessed or something. I would ask you, in what ways have you found connection with a higher power that loves you?
The big emotional moments like going up, doing the rising sun stuff, like both years I've gone have been completely like transformed my view of God, but on a day-to-day basis. It's almost like I have this pendulum of the old God on the left, the new God on the right, and I need to somehow find the middle, but this new God is saying, you don't have to do anything. You're good enough just the way you are. And the old God is saying, do this or else. I almost need to like, I don't know. That's just the new God is almost like, well, you don't have to do the daily work. I already love you. But it's almost yielding the same result because
Yeah.
then I'm not.
What if there was some part of the middle ground? I know this is kind of getting a little bit of away from where we started with our question today. I hope that's okay with you guys for a second.
Hey, you're good. This is
Yeah.
great.
Brandon would probably roll his eyes about this whole God thing because I feel like I'm a broken record with it. But
I don't think so. And I wonder actually, as you're talking through this and teasing it out, I wonder if that pendulum you're talking about has some merit to it if you were to take it a step further. So you've got the one God that's like, you will read your scriptures and pray every day, or I don't love you. The new God that you're kind of like cultivating relationship is like, hey son, like I love you no matter what, man. You could do anything you want today, and I'm gonna love you no matter what. But what
it's a
if
whole
that new
lot more
God,
comfortable.
what's that?
It's a whole lot more comfortable, but it's really not at the same time, I guess.
It's a whole lot more comfortable. I think but I think I wonder if there's a next step to that in your relationship. And I don't know, this is going to be your wrestle, but what if that new God of yours was also, instead of saying you need to do this or I'm not going to love you, was also saying I love you so much and I want relationship with you. Like I want you to come and be close to me. I want you to seek me. I want you to feel my love for you. I want you to know more fully who you are in my eyes. What if that was like the message was coming from a place of mutual love rather than power differential, one up, one down?
I think the the scary part is that I don't fully trust it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't trust that if I step in, I'm going to get a different result. If I step in and try,
Try
it
what?
really is a power struggle between these two gods that I can't figure out. And I'm scared to step in with any god because there's just a lot of pain, shame, anxiety, fear. And so it's
Sure.
more comfortable to just stay out of it.
I don't want to like change the subject, but I think you just described my relationship with you.
It's actually pretty interesting that you guys are drawing those connections. Explain that a little bit further, would you, Kaitlyn?
Um, what did he say? He said something about I don't trust that if I step in that things will be different.
Mm-hmm. You're so full of your relationship has been so full of, I think the way Jared you've said it is, I've been so full of anxiety and fear that I don't really trust that if I step in things will be different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How does that sit with you, Jared, when you hear that from your wife?
I love it. I'm just joking. It's I mean, on one hand, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it makes total sense on one, and then on the other hand, it's like, I want to give her that safety, but like, what if I can't?
What if
Uh,
I can't?
like, I'm going to continue to try and dig in, but what if I just can never get to a point where relapses aren't a thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's a question. You can hear the shame in all of that already.
Mm-hmm.
Like the truth is that you can get to a point that relapse isn't a thing, and you're actually teasing out some things that are getting in the way right now. It's actually interesting because this is we could continue to use this analogy in both places, that if we look at the relationship with God, most of us, I don't think I know a single person who like wakes up and has a tangible hold on their relationship with God every single day. It seems like, and I don't know, this is my own perspective, so again, you guys can take it or leave it, but it seems to me that maybe God doesn't even want me to necessarily have that all the time, because I live in a fallen world where I have to act in faith, and it's the action in faith that does something. for the cultivation of my heart and my life, even my relationship with God. And so many times, and this is an interesting spot because you guys are in a weird spot in your relationship. Not many couples get here where you can sit here together in a meeting with me and talk about a regular pattern of relapse without even considering whether or not the marriage is going to disintegrate. You guys are like, here, Kaitlyn, you're like, yeah, this is a pattern. It still hurts sometimes, but it's like, I know I don't take it personally anymore much. And like, it bothers me, but it's also comforting to me in some ways because I don't have to take that risk. And in some ways, like, most of the time we're going to teach people, hey, you probably don't want to lean in until you know that there's like genuine work happening. The interesting thing here is that that there is some deeper work happening, the day-to-day stuff that would just shift and change the pattern isn't happening. And yet at some point, the same principle is true that the leaning into the relationship, when there's honest heart and effort happening, is the next step forward for deeper intimacy in a relationship. The same way that for me, at least the only way I know how is my next step forward is to continually look for ways to continually put myself in the arena of continuing to cultivate a relationship with a higher power without any guarantees. Jared, every time you go up in the mountains, do you see the burning bush?
No.
One time.
That's the thing is I've always considered, like, after those experiences, the realization is I thought I was a spiritual man all of a sudden, but I realized I'm just a man that had some really cool spiritual experiences, but I'm not doing the daily work to be a spiritual person. It's kind of the realization I've come to.
Gotcha. And I would, again, there's even some shame laced into that I would maybe rephrase that and say, you are a spiritual man who's not engaging in spiritual things.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah.
It's already built into every one of us. There is something already built into us to be spiritual. It's whether or not we want to do the work to cultivate that part of ourselves. But you're a spiritual man who had those spiritual experiences. And you also are a human man who sometimes lets go of the habit of pursuing a spiritual relationship with God. Right? Like we all do. Everybody does that. Even like some of the most famous prophets from the Bible, Christ himself felt disconnected from God at some point, right? Like, did that make him not a spiritual man who had spiritual experiences?
Not them, but me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, but you, exactly. But that's where I'm going with you is that's part of the way of looking at things. Like, I get the sense that that's almost the default setting, just belief system wise, not just with God, but with other things, that the default setting is I default to being a schmuck first, and then once in a while I get some things right.
Yep.
And it would seem that shift in belief would be really, really important towards letting yourself not be driven so much from shame, but from a place of love. It's probably really hard to hear the love of God's voice if shame is always in the way, because the default is that I'm not enough. And I wonder if that's actually one of the pinch points that's causing some disconnection inside of you guys' relationship with one another on both sides. Is I see two people who have gone to the depths with each other, but every day when they wake up in the morning and they look themselves in the mirror, they don't go like, holy smokes, I'm amazing. I'm resilient. We've been through hell together. I see two people who wake up in the morning and the default is, man, I hope he doesn't figure out that I'm not worthy of loving. Like, hopefully he relapses so I don't have to like put myself out there today, or he wakes up and goes, man, like, if I really actually get into the nuts and bolts of what I'm feeling and thinking, and she sees that I'll just go prove her right real quick. I'm just going to be a schmuck and I'm going to act out really quickly.
Get into nuts and bolts. I'm going to turn that word back on you.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Getting into the nuts and bolts has got me here.
Yeah.
Bad joke.
Well, that's true though, right? It's funny. It's funny that the nuts and bolts are an attempt to fill the God-sized hole that's still there.
Mhm.
Kaitlyn, what are you thinking? I see your facial expressions going on over there.
He's just not funny. No, one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is and in fact that's something that we've kind of changed working with our kids, is the idea that perception drives intervention. And so just as Jared was talking, I was just thinking, like, what's his perception of himself? What's my perception of myself that's driving the way that I seek God, the way that I seek recovery, the way that I seek him. And but yeah, pretty much what you were saying, that perception of ourselves and each other, that's what has constructed and continues to construct the systems that we're in. Or I can't remember what you called it. Anyway, but that viewing ourselves differently and starting at that core of like, who am I and who are we and who is he? I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So I wonder, like, if we were to look at like the concept all the way back around to dailies, and what dailies could be doing is they become, instead of a checklist of being a good boy or a good girl or being valuable in God's eyes, they become more of every single time I do a daily, it's an act of self-compassion. And I wonder if that's maybe a place to start for both of you towards the relationship and also with each other. And you probably already do this a lot. I bet you've heard the term self-compassion at least maybe 500 times in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do I do it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, like, if we were to take away the whole checklist, like, and select maybe one thing that would be a foot in the door towards the day-to-day changing of patterns while also doing the roots work, I wonder if self-compassion would be a good place to step into the stream. And maybe something even just like, it could be formal or informal practice. But how many have either of you guys done much practice with the concept of self-compassion at all?
I got a book on it because Amanda told me to, and I started listening to it for about 10 minutes.
Okay. So you've got 10 minutes of listening to a book on self-compassion.
And probably didn't gain much out of it. So,
okay. Yeah. Okay. How about you, Kaitlyn?
Did I read that book? I think I started that book too, but I can't remember if I finished it. But
what about your experience with self-compassion itself?
I don't know about a daily practice. I feel like I do feel like I've come a long way in the last few years. And I feel like there are some aspects of my life that I feel like I'm doing pretty good at. But I think I do a lot of, like, with him specifically, like, I assume a lot. I assume a lot of, like, oh, I'm annoying him because I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm annoying him, or I'm whatever I'm doing isn't like good enough, or it's too much, that I'm like too much for him, or yeah. So I do think there's a lot of, like, with that surrounding him and like worrying about his perception of me, that I could probably lean into a little more.
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
think, like you're saying, Kate, and like we've been talking about, is I've had those glimpses of self-compassion and it's awesome. But I do think my default still is 80% schmuck, like you said. And so I've had glimpses, and that's why I keep pressing forward in recovery. But that default belief system is still, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have a couple of thoughts, but before I go into those for a second with you guys, when I brought up self-compassion, both of you guys kind of just gave this look back into the camera I just want to know, like, what, not the thought process, but what was the emotion that came up when I mentioned that for both of you?
Honestly, for me, it's shame and emotion.
Yeah, you can go with shame.
Because I immediately went into, okay, well, ask Tyler, what do I need to do each day to connect with God? What are some good tools? What are so, like, I went into checklist mode, and then that brought me in more shame because it's like, oh, now I'm doing exactly what he's telling me not to. And so, to me, self-compassion brought up like, well, you're not doing good enough to be able to have self-compassion, so you have to add more to your list in order to feel self-compassion. And just, you can hear
Yeah.
the circle going on. So that's what it did for me.
The shame loop going on in your head just by me bringing it up.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. How about you, Kaitlyn? What was your emotional experience when I brought it up?
I don't have time for this.
I,
But that's probably my reaction to a lot of things of
yeah.
just like, oh, another thing. But that's why we're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, are you, Kaitlyn, are you currently doing any other kinds of dailies work on any kind of a consistent basis at all?
I'm not right now. I was doing really good this summer. Our therapist had me on a good plan, and I just tanked since school started. So
Gotcha. Things change and it's hard to get the
that's definitely
habits.
something that I need to jump back into.
When you were on that kind of a schedule, were you noticing any kind of a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the difference?
Well, one thing that because I think there's a lot of things that I do every day, like to take care of myself and take care of my body. But I think what I realized as we were talking to our therapist was that there's not a lot of things I do every day that actually, you know what I mean? There's self-care, like things you like to do. And then there's like the deep self-care that really like makes you feel good. And one thing that I was doing was really all I was doing was I was journaling every day and I was playing the piano every day. And the piano just like gets all the emotions out, and it just music. It's just and so that's what I was doing. And
Awesome.
it was a couple weeks of that I feel like really helped me and was really good for me, but I haven't been the last couple weeks.
Okay. Okay. So, without trying to induce any shame, but between the two of you guys' answers, Jared, you defaulted to shame, like, oh, like I can't even do that, like this, that, and the other. And Kaitlyn, you're like, I don't have time for this. I would just say, like, we do an assignment in our groups called the Life Outcomes Assessment, which is where we take a look at what are the outcomes we're producing in our lives, and do the inputs line up with the outcomes? Usually they do, but our stated outcomes are usually not being met. And I'm hearing you guys in that spot going like, man, we want a different outcome. But when we look at the inputs, we don't have the right inputs towards that outcome. So we're left with this. In a certain sense, it's its own form of lust, where I ache because I want something different, but the inputs aren't leading me there. And so now that gap between reality and what I want hurts. Like, and that in and of itself can cause shame. It can cause all sorts of other kinds of, responses and feelings too, frustrations. And so I'm going to make a suggestion that I hope will simplify things instead of make it more complicated. So Jared, that checklist, what about a checklist of one item? Would that be easier to do than a checklist of 5 items, 10 items?
Yeah, it would be easier, but it's like, oh, then I'm not. Yeah, that shame voice of, well, if you're not doing the whole daily charge or the whole 5 items, then you're not doing enough. So,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
would it be easier? Yeah.
Okay. Not that it should matter, but like if a therapist gave you permission to only do one daily, would you be willing to practice that for a minute?
Yeah, and I have been trying to get out and walk and do some things like that.
Could I suggest the daily? Could I suggest that it is
Yeah,
actually an act of self-compassion? And here's how it works. And this would be for both of you guys. So instead of Kaitlyn needing to do all of those things, I love what you said. If you could get back in the habit of your music, like that's so powerful. That's going to help your feelings move. That's good emotional hygiene. Um, but if the baseline daily was just the practice of self-compassion, even just once, there's some research on this, and there's 3 parts to self-compassion. I'm going to walk you through them really quickly, even though you probably know them. The first one is just taking a moment of mindfulness. So Jared, you could have done this just now, or Kaitlyn, you could have done it just now, even in describing the emotions you had, where you're like, oh man, I wonder if I'm like good enough for him or if I'm annoying him. The minute you recognize any of that shame script, Jared, as soon as I asked you, you were like, oh, I suck. I'm not doing the checklist. And all I want to do is know the checklist. Like, it's like, oh, there it is. Either one, that's the first part of self-compassion. It's the first step is mindfulness. It's just becoming aware that I'm living in a certain state of emotion or an old belief that's not serving me well. So, oh, there's my failure again, or oh, there's my shame. Like for me, it was always my shame. Like Tyler, you suck. You failed your client here, or you did this wrong for your kids, or anytime that comes up, the first part is mindfulness and just, hey, I'm having a moment right now. I'm having a moment of shame or anxiety or fear, suffering, whatever it is. It's doing this to my body. It's doing this to my mind. This is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling anxiety. I'm feeling what? I'm experiencing a moment of suffering. That's the first section. The second section then moves into something we call common humanity, which is just to remind yourself that what you're feeling, like Jared, that shame you're feeling, is being felt literally by billions of people right now in this moment too. Like you're not alone. Like what you're experiencing is just part of what it means to be human. So you don't have to judge yourself for it. You don't have to like hurry and scramble to be done with it. Just accept that you're having a human moment, that what you're experiencing is part of the human condition. And then the last part is the self-compassion part. And this is where you train yourself to talk to yourself as if you were talking to your best friend. So, Jared, I know you're a little sarcastic, but if I was your best friend and I called you up and was like, dude, like I'm such a failure. I cannot get out of this shame. I've got all these things spinning through my head of the things I should do that I know I'm not going to do, which means I suck, which means God's probably not going to love me. I'm just really like, I don't know how to get out of this hole. What are you going to say to me?
Well, I feel like I do this with all my friends already. Just this morning, I had a conversation where I just had empathy and said, man, that's really hard. I'm sorry, but you just made a mistake and that's okay. Like you're still good. God still loves you. You still have worth. Like and different words than that, but basically around the same lines of you're all right.
Yeah.
It's okay to
Yeah.
make mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah. Beautiful. So the way that I know you, Jared, I know that if it's interesting, because this is what's interesting to me is I know you well enough to know this, that if I wanted a guy in my corner for when I'm feeling down and out, you're going to be the guy I call. Like, because you're going to be, hey, it's okay. Like, we're going to get through this. It doesn't change your value. Like, you're really good at speaking that to a lot of other people. A lot of other people rely on you for that. Right. The practice now is to do the same thing with yourself. You could almost like slap one of your friends or your group members' faces on your situation once you've gotten to that for those first 2 steps. So, oh, I'm feeling some shame. I'm judging myself. Hey, this is human. Everybody feels this sometimes. Now slap somebody else's face right over the top of yours and speak to them like you just did with your buddy today on the phone. And that's the practice. That's it. And there's a formal practice that you can do. And this is the challenge that I would give you guys if you're looking for one single input that will, I promise it will change your life if you were to get mostly consistent, not even perfect at it. But if you were to write yourself a self-compassion letter every day for the course of 2 weeks, I promise you would notice a difference in the way that you start to see yourself and view yourself and even believe things about yourself. It's just repetition. That's all it is. And if that part of you starts to shift, then that opens you up to that love that you're looking for, to then go, I kind of want to take better care of myself. Maybe I'll exercise today, or maybe I'll play the piano today, or I need to prioritize getting some things done for myself today so that I have something to give to this world. And it starts with self-compassion. And the beautiful thing about self-compassion is that you will get an opportunity to practice it at least once every day, if not hundreds of times. So like Kaitlyn right there, you just it came up like, oh man, like I must be annoying him. Oh, what am I feeling? I'm feeling confused, scared, shame. Write yourself a paragraph. Practice, especially that last part. You're the same way, Kaitlyn. Like you build people up. Do you get support from other people much?
Not like he does.
Yeah.
I have a good group of friends, but I maybe don't get that deep with them. And then I do have like my lift girls, but I don't talk to them as much as I probably should.
Yeah.
I've kind of have a hard time.
I would say you get almost no support when it comes to this deep stuff, besides me.
I'm not very good at like, I don't know. I get pretty self-conscious connecting with other women, or like speaking of self-compassion, like feeling like I'm annoying them, or I don't know, that they have way better things to do than listen to my crap or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah. So if I was your best friend and I just called you, Kaitlyn, said the exact same things, what would you say to me? Hey, Kaitlyn, like I am too much. I burn out my relationships. I don't want people to have to worry about me, and I don't want to be a burden to them. I just feel like I'm too much sometimes. Like, what are you going to say to me?
I would probably just say like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, I hope that you know that like I love you, and no matter what, you can call me anytime and we can go get a drink or whatever you need to do. I'd love to listen, but too much, like no way.
Yeah. Okay. What would be wrong with just practicing that simple task with yourself on one time a day when something like that comes up?
Nothing. I need to I need to be better at stepping away or stepping out of that moment of like whatever I'm doing, and give myself space and room to think and to feel and to process that and tell myself that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so that's maybe my suggestion to you guys is, if there was anything that you did, it would just be at the end of your day, take a minute and go across your whole day and rate your emotions. Oh, I felt the most confused here or the most angry here, 0 to 10, whichever one's the highest. 5 minutes, write a self-compassion letter. And what will happen is if you do that consistently, eventually what you'll find is that throughout the day, things will be coming up and you'll be much more aware of them. And then you'll just practice it without having to write it anymore. It'll almost like you'll almost start to use the negative script that's always there as the starting point for the truth. So you can actually flip that negative script on its head just with a little bit of practice. And so that little bit of intention, and again, not if you miss a day, you're not bad, but a commitment towards consistency on one thing, I believe would actually change over time. I believe it would be the catalyst to changing your views of yourself, and actually ultimately your ability to lean into one another with more vulnerability, because you'll know more fully who you are, and you'll know that it's okay to be human with each other. So I don't know if this is exactly where we had planned on going today. You guys have
Great.
any other last thoughts or questions today? Feelings?
No, this is great. As you were just talking, I was thinking about how, I mean, we always talk about how we can go deep with each other, and we're great at like communicating and stuff. But like, I think, I don't know, just recognizing that the fun stuff is vulnerable too. And that maybe like being known in that way with each other, like maybe that's, I mean, that's the part of the vulnerable we're missing. And that's still vulnerable. And that if we can go there with ourselves and be comfortable with that, then we can lean into going there with each other.
Yeah. If you guys want extra credit, you guys could even do the exercise and share what you come up with every night with each other before you go to bed. Although I wouldn't recommend it if it's towards the other person. Maybe start the morning off with that instead of going to bed on it, because people don't sleep very well at night like that. But thank you guys so much for your willingness to come on. And honestly, I just, because I know you both, I just want you guys to know genuinely how much I love and admire and respect you both. Like, I know that you guys are doing hard work, heavy lifting. I would hope, and I can see your body language, Jared, I would hope that you can take that script and let it go, that you already have the goods. The goods are already there. It's just a matter of accepting them. And then once you start to accept them, the actions start to take care of themselves. So thank you for who you guys are. Thanks for coming on. And thank you for sharing yourselves this way with so many other people.
Thanks, Tyler.
We love and appreciate what you guys do, and you've helped bless our lives tremendously. So thank you guys.
Yeah, well, you bet. And to our listeners, if you found any value to this, there's some ways that you can help both Jared and Kaitlyn. You can reach out to us and send us feedback, or you can get on and leave reviews. And if you like what you're getting here on this show and you want to be able to help without spending any money, the best way that you can help is by sharing it with other people. And you guys have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.